Today on DLife, a global epidemic. That is what diabetes has become. We get a full report from Dr. Fran Kaufman, who has traveled to every corner of the world searching for answers.
Your mother told you to eat your veggies, and you probably ignored her. Well, I have a recipe that will make your mom proud.
Diabetes drug interactions can be a dangerous proposition. I'll break down how to avoid a medical emergency.
Welcome to DLife, your source for a healthy diabetes life. I'm Nicole Johnson, and today our show is going global to give you insight into diabetes on other continents and in other cultures. Dr. Fran Kaufman is a world-renowned diabetes specialist who has been featured in a critically acclaimed documentary on the Discovery Health Channel. Recently, we caught up with Dr. Kaufman near her office in Los Angeles to hear about her global trek in researching the diabetes pandemic.
I understand that you've been on a global trip.
An absolute whirlwind. It was incredible.
Across the 7 continents, it affects 246 million people.
We put this together as a concept. My good friend, Dr. John White at Discovery Health, and I were talking, wouldn't it be great to look at diabetes around the world? He said, let's go for it.
What did you expect to find when you went around the globe?
Well, I expected to find a variety of different approaches to diabetes, and I hoped a variety of different answers for what worked in that local area. And I was surprised by what we found. Everybody had a unique take on how they had to manage it in their own countries, with their own people, with their own culture, and with their own economic kind of situation. And some of it was so exciting.
So we know it's a global epidemic. Do you think it's a global pandemic?
Well, I think it is. I think we know that type 1 is rising all over the world, but type 2 is exploding everywhere. And when you look at the kind of numbers that some of these countries are going to have to deal with, and the healthcare system, when you see it, how it will be able to support those kind of numbers, I mean, it's overwhelming.
My name is Loretta Bartman, and I'm 12 years old. And I think about my friends that I met here. I think, like, if I never came here, I never met such good friends, and I wouldn't be as healthy as I am now.
I was especially moved by the teenager that you interviewed in South Africa. Can you tell us a little bit about him?
Well, you know, I don't think I was prepared to go to that place. You go into this vast, almost like an orphanage, run by phenomenal people. So there they are. I mean, they're just active, you know, kids like we would see anywhere with diabetes. And these children live there because they actually can't be cared for in their home townships, in their own homes, by their own parents, because of just the economic and conditions, and because of the access to health care. I've had the opportunity to meet some of their parents, and the parents say that if they bring them home and do what they need to do to buy their medications and buy their food, then they can't feed any of the rest of their children. So they have to make a, you know, kind of a balance between, do I care for this one and lose everybody else, or do I put this one in this home and then I can scrape together to keep everybody else together and alive.
When most people think of India, you think of like vegetarian diets and very lean people. You don't think of diabetes, but it's huge there.
It's unbelievable there. I think that was, looking at this clinic, so each follow 100,000 people with diabetes. It's mainly type 2, although there's a number of children and adults who do have type 1 diabetes. And the diabetes in India, they get it at a lower BMI, so they're not obese. They're just a little kind of chubbier around the waist. Many of them talked about their Indian culture, where they'd never expect to go to somebody's house without being offered sweets, and that if you kind of don't partake, it's kind of a cultural, you know, no-no.
Insult.
Yeah.
And I was also very surprised to see that Finland has a problem, because you think of, you know, Finland, people biking and they're healthy.
Well, you know, Finland is probably got the best answer to all of this. They have, from the type 1 standpoint, they have the highest rates on the planet. But they know what's happening. They, you know, have obviously access to health care for everybody. Prevention is key on their mind. So Finland is way ahead of us. As far as type 2 is concerned, since the end of World War II, they've had a national effort to prevent disease.
What was the most interesting approach you saw to caring about diabetes?
Well, I think the Indian really holistic medical approach was phenomenal. And their ability to bring that whole medical team out to rural India. But nothing was as fun as salsa dancing and diabetes clinic in Sao Paulo.
So what did you learn ultimately?
Well, you know, what we all knew all along, right? We would find this disease in every nook and cranny on this planet, and that in some fundamental way, everybody affected feels the same. I mean, the commonality of having a chronic disease, knowing how tough it is in demanding what we do, because diabetes is the ultimate, you're the driver. Ultimately, you're the one in charge. And how awe-inspiring that can be, how scary that can be. It was touching to see how that plays out across the world, and it was touching to see how it's really the universality of this disease.
Fran Kaufman, an amazing doctor and an inspiring individual. Drug interactions with diabetes, they could have serious consequences. Up next, Dr. David Marks with information that may one day be a lifesaver. Dr. David Marks has a special guest who's here to tell you everything you need to know about how your medicines interact with diabetes treatments.
Some drugs for common diseases like high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and depression can be an issue for people with diabetes. With more, I'm joined by Dr. John White, professor of pharmacotherapy at Washington State University and the author of Medications for the Treatment of Diabetes. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Now let's start at the beginning. What do we mean by drug interactions?
Well, drug interactions encompass many things. Drug interactions are situations where two drugs interact to either negate or amplify the effect of the second drug.
Do you have any specific interactions that people may have heard about, or some examples?
Well, there are a number of very important interactions. One would be, in the area of diabetes, about 50% of males have erectile dysfunction. And of course, the most common drug used to treat that is Viagra. At the same time, many people who have diabetes have heart problems. So if you happen to be a male who's taking Viagra and you have another medication, nitroglycerin, for chest pain, and you take those two drugs together, it can drop your blood pressure so low that you can actually die.
Are these common?
Fatal interactions are not common, but drug interactions that cause a problem significant enough so that the patient has to present to an emergency room or go see their physician, that is a common occurrence.
Now, in diabetes, people are on many medications. How do they keep track of them? What's the best way to avoid these interactions?
Well, I always tell patients who have diabetes that if they're on a particular regimen and they start a second drug, or another drug rather, whether it be an over-the-counter drug, a nutritional supplement, or a prescription drug, first of all, they need to talk to their provider. Secondly, they need to ask the pharmacist, so it's sort of a double check. And then thirdly, they should always check their blood sugars more frequently after they start the medication, because every individual is different, and we don't know, we can't always predict ahead of time what a medication in mixture with other medications is going to do in an individual.
Even aspirin.
Aspirin's a great example. You know, historically, aspirin was used as a medication to lower blood sugars, and if you take very high doses of aspirin, sort of the arthritic doses, you can get some blood glucose lowering activity. And now, we don't use aspirin for that anymore, and aspirin doesn't usually cause problems with low blood glucose levels, but most patients who have diabetes should be taking a baby aspirin or a regular aspirin daily to prevent heart attacks. And that's a very important recommendation. I think patients who have diabetes should talk to their doctor about that if they're not taking aspirin.
Is there any other advice that you can give, very simple advice, quick advice, like keeping a log of medications or something that can help people?
Well, yeah, actually keeping a log is a wonderful idea. You can do that, or a simple way that many people deal with their medications is to take them in a bag with them when they go to their provider, whether it be a physician or a nurse practitioner or a PA or whoever, and show them all of their medications, because oftentimes patients are seeing 2 or 3 providers. So it's really difficult for the provider that they see that particular day to understand everything that they're on. And similarly, if they will get all of their medications from one pharmacy, that pharmacist will do a better job of keeping track of interactions and warning the patient of potential interactions. Secondly, if you go to a health food store or go to a pharmacy and buy vitamins or supplements or any other over-the-counter remedies, talk to the pharmacist about them.
Keep track of it. Thank you very much. That's great information.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Again, there are so many drugs that can affect your blood glucose levels that you should always tell your doctors what medications you take, even over-the-counter medications. Read all prescriptions carefully, and when in doubt, ask your doctor or pharmacist. For more information about diabetes drug interactions, just log on to DLife.com/BGDrugs.
Hi, I'm Chef Michonne. Welcome to the DLife Kitchen. Now today we're going to make crispy fried vegetables. A lot of people who aren't vegetable lovers will eat veggies when they're fried in batter, like a plate of fried zucchini with ranch dressing or tempura fried vegetables at an Asian restaurant. This recipe gives you the flavor and crunch without the unhealthy effects of deep fat frying. So let me show you. First, we're going to start by not using breadcrumbs. We're using really great whole grain cereal. We're just going to pop it in the bowl with the rest. And now we're going to make it taste delicious by adding some fresh chopped basil. I love using fresh herbs because they're packed with antioxidants and really, really great for flavor. Some freshly grated Parmesan cheese, a little bit of cayenne pepper. Give it a little bit of zip. Now we're going to just give it a good toss, and this smells fabulous. Now, I'm going to show you how to cut the vegetables, and really almost any vegetable will do. Here I have a zucchini squash. And it's really important that you just cut it in bite-sized pieces. They don't have to be perfect. We're going to pop them in the bowl. Now, if you use a hard vegetable, like sweet potatoes, what you can do is just roast them in an oven, preheated at about 300 degrees, which I did with these, sprayed them with a little bit of a misto, maybe about 10 minutes. So I'm going to take some of these, put them in a bowl of whole grain flour, and again, whole grain, multigrain, very important if you're living with diabetes. We have some mushrooms here, have a little bit of red onion, one of my favorites, and we'll take some of that fresh zucchini squash, yellow squash, put it in the bowl, just kind of lightly coat these, and then plop them right into some pre-beat egg wash. So it's just a couple of eggs that you can scramble with a whisk. And this is really going to help the cereal coating stick. We give it a toss. I have a slotted spoon, and then transfer them over to your whole grain cereal kind of breading mix. And this is going to be delicious. What's great is, you know, it gets to be that time of year. If you even garden or raise some of your own vegetables, this is a really great multi-purpose way to use them all. And the great thing about this particular method is that instead of like steaming or boiling the vegetables, they really keep their nutrients, but also you bake them and they don't turn mushy on you. So here I have a misto, and I'm going to just pump it up a little bit and then spray my veggies with a little bit from the misto. And then we're going to take it to a preheated 400-degree oven and bake it about 8 to 10 minutes until they're cooked the way we want them to be cooked. So here, take a look. One of the things that I really like about this is that some of the crumbs will fall off, which I don't think is a bad thing at all because it actually shows the color of the veggies. So if you take a look at this, you can see a little bit of the green from the zucchini. You can see, you know, the red from the onion. Oops. Delicious. It's really, really quite beautiful. Now you can serve it with any low-carb dressing that you like. This is a low-carb ranch, whatever you like. Or if you're not going to do the dressing thing, just a little bit of lemon is really, in my opinion, all that needs. And there you have it, crispy fried vegetables. Now you can find this recipe and thousands more like it at DLife.com/recipebox. Try this one out this week and then go back to the website, give it a review. I'm Chef Michonne. See you next time in the DLife Kitchen.
Welcome back to DLife. Judges make decisions every day, but how would you like to decide this one? Pancreatic cancer or diabetes? U.S. Federal Court Judge Al Dabrowski handed down the verdict in favor of diabetes and has lived an inspirational story since then.
All rise. The United States Bankruptcy Court for the District of Connecticut is now in session. The Honorable Robert Dabrowski presiding.
Judge Dabrowski sits on the federal bench in New Haven, Connecticut. But 20 years ago, he was an ambitious young assistant U.S. attorney fighting the biggest case of his life.
During that trial, I worked 7 days a week from 7 in the morning till at least midnight for 2 to 3 years without a break. I recall sitting on the floor of my office preparing for trial the next day, literally collapsing on my office with my back against the wall and thinking to myself, this trial has got to end so I can get myself back in shape. And you know, I'm exhausted. And about 6 months later, as the trial progressed and things got worse, I was subjected to a battery of additional tests that took quite some time and was ultimately diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. Initially, they told me I had no chance of surviving a year. They told me flat out that I was not going to make it for a year.
There was one doctor at New York's Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center who offered hope. He was one of a few doctors in the country capable of performing a radical and risky surgery that could save the judge's life, but it would leave him with diabetes.
Most of the people that we see come in with diabetes as related to their pancreatic cancer, it usually has developed within the year and a half, 2 years of their diagnosis of malignancy. And so it is not that the patients who were diabetic from birth have a higher rate of developing pancreatic cancer.
With no other option, the decision was easy.
They took out a good part of my pancreas. They took out approximately 50% of my stomach, resected my intestines, and they had to resect the portal vein. And that's, I understand, to be an extremely difficult procedure, a very dangerous procedure, because if they can't resect it or if they lose it during the operation, you bleed to death on the table.
In 1989, there were only a few centers in the United States that were performing these kinds of operations with an acceptable survival rate from surgery. Now, the operative mortality at most major centers is down to about 1%.
Judge Dabrowski's operation was a success, and he started learning to live life with type 1 diabetes. But during the first year of his recovery, a family tragedy hit.
Almost to the day of the year that I was supposed to die, my son, then 15 years old, was killed in an excuse me.
The Dabrowski's oldest son, Adam, was killed in a car accident.
After my son's death, I had also totally and completely given up hope. I stopped taking insulin. I was pretty much a wreck at that particular time. And for better or worse, I decided to take my son and wife to Hawaii because they always wanted to go there.
I realize now in hindsight that it was a family rebuilding exercise, that it was important that we get away from everybody. But at the time, it was really difficult. And it was hard for anyone to tell me, looking at him, that he was going to be okay.
That was probably the moment in time where I decided to get my act together and that I needed to survive. I started taking insulin, I started to gain weight, I started to get my strength back. However, what I consider just as important as insulin is a high level of activity. So every day I make it a point to get at least 2 hours of as intense exercise as I can. I usually play tennis 3 times a week and a lot more in the summer, maybe 10, 12 hours. But I do other things. I ride, I kayak, I sail, I ski in the winter.
It's been 20 years since the judge decided to try the risky surgery. He has no doubt that he made the right choice.
My diabetes is unique because it's the result of the removal of my pancreas as a result of pancreatic cancer. Having survived it, I'm actually thankful I have diabetes. It's changed and altered my life in extremely radical ways. I didn't appreciate the family I now make my family as my focus.
The diabetes, I think, is you know, not something that you wish for, but in our case, it's better than the alternative.
We'll be back with more right after this. Here's what's in the DLife inbox this week. Sal G from Elmira, New York asks, why does insulin make me gain weight, and what can I do about it?
Although weight gain is often associated with the use of insulin therapy, it's important to understand that the insulin itself does not cause weight gain. Instead, this weight gain is usually the result of the body's improved ability to use glucose as energy that can trigger a weight gain. Glucose that was previously flushed out of the body begins to be stored as fat, which translates to extra pounds. Insulin resistance, one of the main characteristics of type 2 diabetes, can also contribute to challenges with weight management. In this situation, the pancreas produces more and more insulin in an effort to reduce circulating blood glucose levels, with little or no response. Insulin resistance is associated with increased amounts of belly fat, also known as visceral fat. Finally, taking more insulin than your body needs can cause frequent blood sugar lows that require additional carbs and calories to treat and can result in weight gain. In other words, feeding hypoglycemic lows constantly can pack on extra pounds. Gaining 5 to 10 pounds with the start of insulin therapy is not an uncommon problem. Fortunately, it's one that can be managed with a little knowledge and awareness. Along with fine-tuning your insulin regimen, remember that a carb-controlled diet, regular exercise, and good blood sugar control are your best tools for losing weight. Your doctor and diabetes educator can help you define and achieve these goals.
Don't forget to visit DLife.com/answers to submit your question to the DLife team. That's it for this edition of DLife. Thanks for watching. We'll be back next week to inform, inspire, and connect for a healthy diabetes life.